Hi, welcome back with the new story. This will be video series on famous personalities. We make video in read along format. So when I narrate the story, you can read along with me in your mind. As they say, when we listen and read at the same time, we understand things more clearly and it helps us in remembering. Today's video is on Dr. Albert Einstein. This is part 1 of the video. Some personalities are born genius. The feat of achievement done by them are considered bigger than the average person. Whenever intelligence quotient is discussed, Dr. Albert Einstein's IQ, that is intelligence quotient, always considered as one of the topmost. So let us begin with Albert Einstein biography. Born in Germany 1879, Albert Einstein is one of the most celebrated scientists of the 20th century. His theories on relativity laid the framework for a new branch of physics, and Einstein's E equal to mc square on mass-energy equivalence is one of the most famous formulas in the world. In 1921, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in physics for his contribution to theoretical physics and the evolution of quantum theory. Einstein is also well known as the original free thinker, speaking on the range of humanitarian and global issues. After contributing to theoretical development of nuclear physics and encouraging F.D. Roosevelt to start the Manhattan Project, he later spoke out against the use of nuclear weapons. Born in Germany to Jewish parents, Einstein settled in Switzerland, and then after Hitler's rise to power in the United States, Einstein was a truly global man and one of the undisputed genius of the 20th century. Let us know about the early life of Albert Einstein. Einstein was born on 14 March 1879 in Ulm, the German Empire. His parents were working class, that is salesman, engineer, and non-observant Jews. At age 15, the family moved to Milan, Italy, where his father hoped Albert would become a mechanical engineer. However, despite Einstein's intellect and thirst for knowledge, his early academic reports suggested anything but a glittering career in academia. His teachers found him dim and slow to learn. Part of the problem was that Albert expressed no interest in learning languages, and the learning by rote that was popular at the time. In one of his quotes, Albert Einstein have said, "School failed me and I failed the school. It bored me. The teacher behaved like Floodwebel, that is sergeants. I wanted to learn what I wanted to know, but they wanted me to learn for the exam." This quote is from Einstein and the Poet, 1983. At the age of 12, Einstein picked up a book on geometry and read it cover to cover. He would later refer to it as his holy booklet. He became fascinated by maths and taught himself, becoming acquainted with the great scientific discoveries of the age. This is Albert Einstein with his wife Elsa. In the photo you can see them together. Despite Albert's independent learning, his language at school, eventually he was asked to leave by the authorities because his indifference was setting a bad example to other students. Let us know about young Albert Einstein. Einstein attended elementary school at the Luitpold Gymnasium in Munich. However, he felt alienated there and struggled with the institution's rigid pedagogical style. He also had what were considered speech challenges, though he developed a passion for classical music and playing the violin that would stay with him into his later years. Most significantly, Einstein's youth was marked by deep inquisitiveness and inquiry. Towards the end of 1880s, Max Talmud, a Polish medical student who sometimes dined with the Einstein family, became an informal tutor to young Albert. Talmud had introduced his pupil to children's science texts that inspired Einstein to dream about the nature of light. Thus, during his teens, Einstein penned what would be seen as his first major paper, The Investigation of the State of Ether in Magnetic Field. Hermann Einstein relocated the family to Milan, Italy. In the mid-1890s, after his business lost out on a major contract, Albert was left at a relative's boarding house in Munich to complete his schooling at the Leopold Gymnasium. Faced with military duty when he turned of age, Albert allegedly withdrew from classes. Using doctor's note to excuse himself and claim nervous exhaustion, with their son rejoining them in Italy, his parents understood Einstein's perspective but were concerned about his future prospects as a school dropout and draft dodger. About his education, Einstein was eventually able to gain admission into Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich. Specifically due to his superb mathematics and physics scores on the entrance exam, he was still required to complete his pre-university education first, and thus attended a high school in Aarau, Switzerland, helmed by Jost Windler. Einstein lived with the schoolmaster's family and fell in love with Windler's daughter, Mary. Einstein later renounced his German citizenship and became a Swiss citizen at the dawn of the new century. After graduating, Einstein faced major challenges in terms of finding academic positions. Having alienated some professors who were not attending class more regularly in lieu of studying independently, Einstein eventually found steady work in 1902 after receiving a referral for a clerk position in Swiss Patent Office. While working at the patent office, Einstein had the time to further explore ideas that had taken hold during his studies at Polytechnic, and thus cemented his theorems and what would be known as the principle of relativity. In 1905, seen by many as a miracle year for the theorist, Einstein had 4 papers published in Annual Physics, one of the best known physics journalists of the era. 2 focused on photoelectric effect and Brownian motion. The 2 others, which outline E equal to mc square and the special theory of relativity, were defining for Einstein's career and the course of the study of physics. He applied for admission to Federal Institution of Technology in Zurich. His first attempt was a failure because he failed exams in botany, zoology and languages. However, he passed the next year and in 1900s became a Swiss citizen. At college he met a fellow student, Mileva Merrick, and after a long friendship they married in 1903. They had 2 sons before divorcing several years later. In 1896, Einstein renounced his German citizenship to avoid military conscription. For 5 years he was stateless before successfully applying for Swiss citizenship in 1901. In this way he got the Swiss citizenship. After graduating from Zurich College, he attempted to gain a teaching post, but none was forthcoming. Instead, he gained a job in the Swiss Patent Office. While working at the Patent Office, Einstein continued his own scientific discoveries and began radical experiments to consider the nature of light and space, as I said earlier. This is Einstein in 1921. He published his first scientific paper in 1900s and by 1905 had completed his PhD entitled A New Determination of Molecular Dimensions. In addition to working on his PhD, Einstein also worked feverishly on other papers. In 1905, he published 4 pivotal scientific works which would revolutionize modern physics. 1905 would later be referred to as his Annus Mirabilis. Einstein's work started to gain recognition and he was given a post at the University of Zurich in 1909, and in 1911 was offered the post of full professor at the Charles Ferdinand University in Prague, which was then part of Austria-Hungary Empire. He took Austrian-Hungary citizenship to accept the job. In 1914, he returned to Germany and was appointed director of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Physics in 1932. Family. Albert Einstein grew up in a secular Jewish family. His father, Hermann Einstein, was a salesman and engineer, as I said earlier, who with his brother founded Electrotechnik Fabrikgenics and NCIE, a Munich-based company that manufactured electrical equipments. Albert's mother, the former Pauline Koch, ran the family household. Einstein had one sister, Maja, born 2 years after him. Albert Einstein wives and children. Albert Einstein married Melania Marek on January 6, 1903, while attending school in Zurich. Einstein met Marek, a Serbian physics student. Einstein continued to grow closer to Marek, but his parents were strongly against the relationship due to her ethnic background. Nonetheless, Einstein continued to see her, with the two developing a correspondence via letters in which he expressed many of his scientific ideas. Einstein's father passed away in 1902 and the couple married thereafter. Hans Albert Einstein. That same year the couple had a daughter, Lizzie, who might have been later raised by Marek's relatives or given up for adoption. Here I would like to tell you all that maybe my pronunciations in the names might not be correct, as I am not well versed in the German or in the European languages. Okay, let us continue. Her ultimate fate and whereabouts remain a mystery. The couple had two sons, Hans Albert Einstein, who became a well-known hydraulic engineer, and Edward Ted Einstein, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young man. The marriage would not be a happy one, with the two divorcing in 1919 and Marek having an emotional breakdown in connection to the split. Einstein, as part of a settlement, agreed to give Marek any funds he might receive from possibly winning the Nobel Prize in the future. During his marriage to Marek, Einstein had also begun an affair sometime earlier with a cousin, Elsa Lorenzel. The couple wed in 1919, the same year of Einstein's divorce. He would continue to see other women throughout his second marriage, which ended with Lorenzel's death in 1936. Now let us see the most exciting part, which is Albert Einstein's scientific contributions. The well-known quantum theory. Einstein suggested that light doesn't just travel as wave, but as electric currents. This photoelectric effect could force metals to release a tiny stream of particles known as quanta. From this quantum theory, other inventors were able to develop devices such as television and movies. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. Special theory of relativity. This theory was written in simple style, with no footnotes or academic references. The core of the theory of relativity is that movement can only be detected and measured as a relative movement, the change of position of one body in respect to another. Thus, there is no fixed absolute standard of comparison for judging the motion of Earth or planets. It was revolutionary because previously people had thought time and distance are absolutes, but Einstein proved this not to be true. He also said that if electrons traveled at close to the speed of light, their weight would increase. This led to Einstein's famous equation E equal to mc square, where E is equal to energy, m is mass, and c is speed of light. General theory of relativity, 1916. Working from a basis of special relativity, Einstein sought to express all physical laws using equations based on mathematical equations. He devoted the last period of his life trying to formulate a final unified field theory which included a rational explanation for electromagnetism. However, he was to be frustrated in searching for his final breakthrough theory. Solar eclipse of 1919. In 1911, Einstein predicted the sun's gravity would bend the light of another star. He based this on his new general theory of relativity on 29th May 1919 during a solar eclipse. British astronomer and physicist Sir Arthur Eddington was able to confirm Einstein's prediction. The news was published in newspapers around the world, and it made Einstein internationally known as a leading physicist. It was also symbolic of international cooperation between British and German scientists after the horrors of the First World War. In the 1920s, Einstein traveled around the world, including the UK, US, Japan, Palestine, and other countries. Einstein gave lectures to packed audiences and became an internationally recognized figure for his work on physics, but also his wider observations on world affairs. Bohr-Einstein debates. During the 1920s, other scientists started developing the work of Einstein and coming to different conclusions on quantum physics. In 1925 and 1926, Einstein took part in debates with Max Born. about the nature of relativity and quantum physics. Although the two disagreed on physics, they shared mutual admiration. Nobel Prize for Physics. In 1921, Einstein won the Nobel Prize for Physics for his explanation of the photoelectric effect. Since his ideas on relativity were still considered questionable, he wasn't actually given the award until the following year due to a bureaucratic ruling. And during his acceptance speech, he still opened to speak about relativity. He still opted to speak about relativity. In the development of his general theory, Einstein had held on to the belief that universe was a fixed static entity, as known as cosmological constant. Though his later theories directly contradicted this idea, and asserted that the universe could be a state of flux. Astronomer Edwin Hubble deduced that we indeed inhabit an expanding universe, with the two scientists meeting at the Mount Wilson Observatory near Los Angeles in 1930. Becoming a US citizen. In 1933, Einstein took on a position at the Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton, New Jersey. At that time, the Nazis led by Adolf Hitler were gaining prominence with violent propaganda and vitriol in an impoverished post-World War I Germany. The party influenced other scientists to label Einstein's work Jewish physics. Jewish citizens were barred from university work and other official jobs, and Einstein himself was targeted to be killed. Meanwhile, other European scientists also left regions threatened by Germany and immigrants to the US, with concern over Nazi strategies to create an atomic weapon. After moving, Einstein never went back to his native land. It was at Princeton that Einstein would spend the rest of his life working on unified field theory, an all-embracing paradigm meant to unify the varied laws of physics. Not long after he began his career at Princeton, Einstein expressed an appreciation for American meritocracy and the opportunities people had for free thought, a stark contrast to his own experience coming of age in 1935. Einstein was granted permanent residency in his adopted country and became an American citizen a few years later. During World War II, he worked on Navy-based weapons system and made big monetary donations to military by auctioning off manuscripts worth millions. Exile. As a German Jew, Einstein was threatened by the rise of the Nazi Party in 1933. While the Nazis seized power, they confiscated Einstein's property and later started burning his books. Einstein, then in England, took an officer to go to Princeton University in the US. He later wrote that he never had strong opinions about race and nationality, but saw himself as a citizen of the world. I do not believe in race as such. Race is a fraud. All modern people are the conglomeration of so many ethnic mixtures that no pure race remains. Once in the US, Einstein dedicated himself to a strict discipline of academic study. He would spend no time on maintaining his dress and image. He considered these things inessential and meant less time for his research. Einstein was notoriously absent-minded. In his youth, he once left his suitcase at a friend's house. His friend's parents told Einstein's parents that young man all never amount to anything because he can't remember anything. Although a bit loner, and happy in his own company, he had a good sense of humor. On January 3, 1943, Einstein received a letter from a girl who had difficulties with mathematics in her studies. Einstein consoled her when he wrote in reply to her letter, "Do not worry about your difficulties in mathematics. I can assure you that mine are still greater." Surely we can call it as a good sense of humor. Einstein professed a belief in a God who reveals himself in the harmony of all being, but he followed no established religion. His view of God sought to establish a harmony between science and religion. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. This was quote of Einstein from Science and Religion, 1941. Einstein and the atomic bomb. In 1939, Einstein and fellow physicist Leo Szilard wrote to President Franklin D. Roosevelt to alert him on the possibility of Nazi bomb. and to galvanize the United States to create its own nuclear weapons. The US would eventually initiate the Manhattan Project. Though Einstein would not take direct part in its implementation due to his pacifist and socialist affiliations, Einstein was also the recipient of much scrutiny and major distrust from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. After learning of the 1945 bombing of Hiroshima, Japan, Einstein became a major player in efforts to curtail usage of the bomb. The following year, he and Schleizler founded the Emergency Committee of Atomic Scientists, and in 1947, via an essay for the Atlantic Monthly, Einstein espoused working with United Nations to maintain nuclear weapons as a deterrent to conflict. Member of the NAACP. In the later in 1940s, Einstein became a member of National Association for Advancement of Colored People, which is NAACP. Seeing the parallels between the treatment of Jews in Germany and the African Americans in the United States, he corresponded with scholar activist W.E.B. Du Bois, as well as performing artist Paul Robeson, and campaigned for civil rights, calling racism a disease in 1946 Lincoln University speech. Time travel and quantum theory. After World War II, Einstein continued to work on his unified field theory and key aspects of the theory of general relativity, such as wormholes, the possibility of time travel, the existence of black holes, and the creation of the universe. However, he became increasingly isolated from the rest of the physics community, whose eyes were set on quantum theory. In the last decade of his life, Einstein, who had always seen himself as a loner, withdrew even further from any sort of spotlight, preferring to stay close to Princeton and immerse himself in processing ideas with colleagues. Politics of Einstein. Einstein described himself as Zionist socialist. He did not support the state of Israel, but became concerned about the narrow nationalism of the new state. In 1952, he was offered the position of President of Israel, but he declined, saying he had neither the natural ability nor the experience to deal with human beings. I am deeply moved by the offer from our state of Israel, and at once saddened and ashamed that I cannot accept it. Here is the photo of Einstein receiving US citizenship. Albert Einstein was involved in many civil rights movements, such as the American campaign to end lynching. He joined the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, which I said earlier, and considered racism America's worst disease. But he also spoke highly on the meritocracy in American society and the value of being able to speak freely. On the outbreak of war in 1939, Einstein wrote to President Roosevelt about the prospect of Germany developing an atomic bomb. He warned Roosevelt that the Germans were working on a bomb with devastating potential. Roosevelt heeded his advice and started the Manhattan Project to develop the US atom bomb. But after the war ended, Einstein reverted to his pacifist views. Einstein said after the war, "Had I known that Germans would not succeed in producing an atomic bomb, I would not have lifted a finger." It was published in Newsweek on 10th of March 1947. In the post-war McCarthy era, Einstein was scrutinized closely for potential communist links. He wrote an article in favor of socialism. Why socialism? In 1949. He criticized capitalism and suggested a democratic socialist alternative. He was also a strong critic on the arms race. Einstein remarked, "I don't know how the Third World War will be fought, but I can tell you what they will use in the fourth: rocks." That shows his sense of humor, surely. In this photo, we can see Rabindranath Tagore and Einstein. Rabindranath Tagore too received a Nobel Prize. Einstein was feted as a scientist, but he was a polymath with interest in many fields. In particular, he loved music. He wrote that if he had not been a scientist, he would have been a musician. Einstein played the violin to a high standard. "I often think in music. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. I get most joy in life out of music." Now let us know, when did Albert Einstein die? Albert Einstein died on April 18, 1955 at age 76 at the University Medical Center at Princeton. The previous day, while working on a speech to honor Israel's 7th anniversary, Einstein suffered an aortic aneurysm. He was taken to the hospital for treatment but refused surgery, believing that he had lived his life and was content to accept his fate. "I want to go with I want," he stated at the time. "It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go. I'll do it elegantly." But I wish. What if Einstein would have done the surgery? Maybe he would have lived longer life, but we never know. Einstein died in 1955. At his request, his brain and vital organs were removed for scientific study. Einstein's brain. During Albert Einstein's autopsy, Thomas Stolz Harvey removed his brain, reportedly without the permission of his family, for preservation and future study by a doctor of neuroscience. However, during his life, Einstein participated in brain studies, and at least one biography says he hoped researchers would study his brain after he died. Einstein's brain is now located at the Princeton University Medical Center, and his remains were cremated and his ashes scattered in an undisclosed location following his wishes. In 1999, Canadian scientists who were studying Einstein's brain found that his inferior parietal lobe, the area that processes spatial relationship, 3D visualization, and mathematical thought, was 15% wider than in people with normal intelligence. According to the New York Times, the researchers believed it may help explain why Einstein was so intelligent. Legacy. Since Einstein's death, a veritable mountain of books have been written on the iconic thinker's life, including Einstein, his life and universe by Walter Isaacson and Einstein, a biography by Germany, both from 2007. Einstein's own words are presented to the collection The World as I See It. In 2018, readers were allowed a glimpse into some of the unfiltered private thoughts of the renowned academic with the publication of the Travel Diaries of Albert Einstein, The Far East, Palestine and Spain 1922-1923. The diaries contained unflattering analysis of the people he came across, including the Chinese and Sri Lankans, a surprise coming from a man known for vehemently denouncing racism in his later years. Around that time, a team of scientists confirmed one aspect of Einstein's general theory of relativity, that the light from a star passing close to a black hole would be stretched to longer wavelengths by the overwhelming gravitational field. Tracking star S2, their measurement showed that the star orbital velocity increased to more than 25 million km per hour as it near-hit the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, its appearance shifting from blue to red as its wavelength stretched to escape the gravitational pull. So this was the story of the genius who inspired us by his life story. Now let us see some memorable photos from Albert Einstein's life journey. So I think I'll make this in the same part instead of making the second part of the video. So this will be a single part video. So I apologize for saying in the beginning that will be part 2 will be coming, but I will include the part 2 in this same part. Okay, let's start looking at some memorable photos of Albert Einstein. Here we can see Albert Einstein with his younger sister Maria, nicknamed Maja, were very close to as children when World War II broke out in Europe in 1939. Maja migrated to the United States to live with Einstein in Princeton, New Jersey. Albert Einstein as a child here. As a child, Einstein was slow in learning to speak and a poor student, but sought inspiration from playing classical music on the violin and developed a fascination with the science behind the compass. In this photo, we can see Albert Einstein after receiving his doctorate at age 23. Einstein found employment as a technical expert at Swiss Patent Office. In this photo, we can see Albert Einstein and his first wife, Melvik Marik, met while studying at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology and were married in 1903. Later, between the couple, Mark helped Einstein by looking up scientific data, checking calculations and copying notes. In this photo we can see Albert Einstein, in which Albert Einstein wrote his first scientific paper at 16-year-old, published his first scientific papers at 22-year-old, and published over 2,300 papers in his lifetime. Although Albert Einstein was born to Jewish parents and became a supporter of the Zionist movement, he maintained a non-nationalistic and pacifist disposition. In this photo we can see Albert Einstein fell ill with ulcer and liver problems in 1917 while he was separated from his wife, Melvik Marik. His cousin Ella Lowenthal nursed him back to health, and the two were wed in 1919. In this photo, Albert Einstein congratulates Thomas Edison over a shortwave telephone from Germany during a celebrated dinner held in the United States for the 50th anniversary of the invention of the electric bulb. Here we can see Albert Einstein after divorcing his first wife Melvik Marik in February of 1919. Einstein married his cousin Elsa Lowenthal a few years later. Here is also another famous photo in which, in 1905, is considered to Albert Einstein's miracle year, because it is this year he published some of his most important scientific papers, which includes the theory of relativity, E equals mc square. Here we can see, as Einstein said, he enjoys music. We can see he began playing the violin at the age 6 years old, and once said, "If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. I often think in music." Albert Einstein with director Jacques Fader and actor Ramon Novarro at the MGM Studios in 1931. In this photo shows after his death in 1955, Einstein was cremated, but his brain was removed and preserved by Dr. Thomas Stolz Harvey for research to better understand what made him a genius. Albert Einstein in 1921. Albert Einstein is awarded a Nobel Prize in Physics for his services to theoretical physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of photoelectric effect. Here in this photo, Albert Einstein fled Nazi Germany in 1933 and went into hiding in England, taking up residence in a small hut in the Norfolk countryside. This photo, in which Einstein had two sons, Hans Albert, pictured with his son, and Edward, with his first wife Melvik Marik. He saw very little of his sons after his divorce in 1919. Here in this photo we can see Albert Einstein's personal letters between Einstein and his first wife and two sons are released to the public in 2006 and reveal the complex and sometimes strained relationship he shared with his family. Here we can see Albert Einstein sits with fellow physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, who followed in his footsteps and took over as a senior professor at the Princeton Institute for Advanced Study a few years after Einstein resigned. Here we can see in this photo Albert Einstein was encouraged by his colleague Leo Szilard to pen a letter to President Roosevelt warning of the dangers of possible German atomic bomb. Here in this photo we can see Albert Einstein, Horace Mann, the president of Lincoln University, the first institute to provide higher learning for African Americans, presents Albert Einstein with an honorary degree in 1946. This is the famous photo of the Time magazine. The July 1946 issue of Time magazine featured an illustration of Albert Einstein alongside his theory of relativity set inside a mushroom cloud of smoke and an atomic explosion. Again, when we talk about the sense of humor, at age 72 years old, Albert Einstein proved that he has a sense of humor in his iconic photograph taken in 1951. Some people think this photograph is fake, but most of the people agree to be it's true. Here we can see Dr. Einstein in the newspaper when he died. Albert Einstein died in 1955 at the age of 76 in Princeton, New Jersey, from a ruptured aneurysm in his abdominal aorta. We can see here a 21-foot bronze statue of Albert Einstein was erected in the Washington, D.C. National Mall in 1979. The papers in the statue left hand contains mathematical equations representing Einstein's major contribution to modern science. This is again the famous photo of Albert Einstein, which is popularly used everywhere for the representation. Einstein's name and wild-haired image has become popular representation of genius in the modern world. So this was the story of the genius who inspired us by his life story. People say life is a golden chance. We have got, we should gain as much as possible. But we can also give back to the world, isn't it? In whichever way we can. And we should use our time wisely, as time waits for no one. So this was the biography of Albert Einstein in my own words. I hope you read along with me and it has gained some knowledge and some new things which you might not be knowing earlier. I'll be making this series with the new personalities in coming episodes. If you like this video, you can definitely subscribe for the video and like and share with your friends so that you can hear more about the famous personalities and you can read along with me. Till then, I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.